Welcome to this In Conversation with Camille Paglia. I have, of course, been calling her Camille Paglia in my head forever because I never met you. I only read it. And so how exciting that I had to learn to say it because she was here. She has long been, for me, somebody that I've both quoted, mispronounced her name, seen as a great inspiration. We are beyond delighted, and I am beyond terrorized, intimidated. Oh. Those people who know me will know that this doesn't happen often, but it is happening now. So as the director of the Institute of Ideas, Claire Fox, as I am, I want to introduce you formally before we get talking. Camille, as we know, is world famous, but she's a university professor of humanities and media studies at the University of Arts in Philadelphia, where she's taught since 1984. Many books, including Sexual Personae, Sex, Art and American Culture, Vamps and Tramps, Glittering Images. Everything she writes makes you think, makes you sit up, makes you wonder what she's going to say next. And every time she speaks, it's the same. And she's got a new book coming out, which is very exciting, in spring 2017, next year. Free Women, Free Men, Sex, Gender and Feminism. And that's what we're going to talk about. Isn't it exciting? Can we give her a warm welcome?
Thank you.
Now, I'm not anticipating that you're all going to agree with everything she says. And if she doesn't upset some of you at some stage during this interview, something's gone horribly wrong. So the format of this is quite simply that I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and I know that Camille has so many interesting things to say that I'm just going to let her talk for at least half of the time. And then we're going to just open up that conversation and you can ask her questions. The first thing to say to you, I suppose, is that I have been doing a lot of, over the years, lots of talks around schools, universities, and one of the most distressing changes that I have noticed is that young women that I've talked to have felt that their militant feminism today was to demand to be protected from awful things. And when I said, what do you want to be protected for? And they sort of said, you want me to be vulnerable? This, to me, summed up a massive change.
Yes.
Any thoughts?
Definitely. In the United States as well. Am I at an appropriate point on the mic so I don't torture people with my Joan Rivers stridency? Okay, I hope it's comfortable. I had a comfort level. Yes, I do tend to shout when I get excited. But there's been a horrible regression. Okay, my generation of the baby boomers, born just after World War II, had, I think, a greater sense of historical reality because of the traumas our parents had experienced in the Depression of the 1930s, followed by all the young men going to war. My father was was in the Pacific Theater, was a paratrooper. All of my uncles had fought in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge, and so on. All of the helmets and things, the equipment brought back from war were in a giant box on my paternal grandmother's back porch. So there was a sense, okay, of tremendous realism about history, about suffering, disaster, loss, the Holocaust, the threat of nuclear warfare with this in the standoff with the Soviet Union, and so the 1950s I experienced growing up is very repressive. I didn't understand why. It was only much later that I concluded that our parents' generation had experienced so much so much anxiety and pressure throughout their lives. They wanted a better life for their children, so we were overprotected. And I was in absolute open revolt against the code of a kind of simpering femininity that was being forced on us in the 1950s. The movies of that period, okay, there was a kind of a chipper, chirpy blondness, okay, an aggressive imperialism of the blondes, of Debbie Reynolds, of Doris Day.
Doris
okay?
Day.
Yes, I just like in the introduction to my new book, I described the horrors, okay, of being at Girl Scout camp and fleeing into the woods, okay, to avoid the mass singing of Doris Day's Que Sera, Sera, okay, by everyone else, okay. So I was signaling my dissent, okay, from this oppressive insistence upon the feminine persona in my transgender Halloween costumes that I started doing early on. It's amazing that my parents, allowed me to do it, but it's obvious I wouldn't dress as a woman. So I was Robin Hood, followed by the Toreador from Carmen. I was Napoleon. It was like one of my. I was like 8, okay, and I was Napoleon. A Roman soldier, okay. Like in the church, for example, Christianity never made a dent on me. I was always drawn to the pagan residue in Christianity. So the Stations of the Cross is where actually I saw the Roman soldiers. So, the whole thing about Jesus' suffering and carrying the cross and stumbling made no pressure whatever. It was the Roman soldiers. I thought a tremendous fashion statement, okay, with their greaves and their breastplates and their. So I was a Roman soldier, like whatever my age 7 Halloween costume and so on. And then eventually I was Hamlet. Okay, and this was there were no other girls who were dressing in men's clothing at Halloween at that period. I just felt I was absolutely suffocating. I belonged to to this generation of rebellion. I finally felt at home in with the kind of gender bending fad that came out of London, swinging 60s, London, mad London, and there's a tremendous energy that came from London. I felt it was a kind of my spiritual home through that period. There were now all kinds of clothing one could buy that was in effect transgender. I had like flared trousers, pinstriped, okay, wearing like Carnaby Street men's ties and so on. Finally, I felt I was coming into my own at that period in the 1960s. So when feminism was reborn with Betty Friedan in the late 1960s, I thought this was supposed to be about the liberation of women. Instead, I really hit a wall of the closed minds, the kind of the new fanatics, okay, of second wave feminism. I had already signaled my revolt by my passion for Amelia Earhart, okay, when I was in high school in the early 1960s. Through Amelia Earhart, who I learned about through some newspaper article, they found some bones, which turned out not to be hers after all, the eternal mystery of what happened to Amelia Earhart. But through my 3-year research project into Amelia Earhart in the early 1960s, I learned about that wonderful period following the women gaining the right to vote in both Britain and the United States. And these women like Katharine Hepburn, Dorothy Parker, Dorothy Thompson, Margaret Burke White. There were just so many, and Anne Morrow Lindbergh. There were so many women who were achieving and who had attained a tremendous celebrity in the period of the 1920s, 1930s. That, to me, is my favorite period in feminism, okay? Because these women, okay, admired what men had done. Okay? There was no male bashing, as became systemic, okay, to second wave feminism. Okay? It's an absolute poison that has spread worldwide. Okay, a feminism based on denigrating men, trivializing what men have done, defining men as oppressors and tyrants through history. Okay, it is an absolute lie. I mean, there have been crimes against women where they have occurred. We must condemn them. Right, but men throughout history have given their lives, okay, and their labor for the support of women and children. Okay, so this is an element in second wave feminism that, to me, is an extrapolation of neuroticism on the part of these fanatics, okay, who have been attracted to this movement. Okay, and I've been at war. Amelia Earhart admired what Lindbergh had done, and she was called the Lady Lindbergh, okay, when she crossed the Atlantic, heroically alone, okay, in an airplane. You couldn't even see it out the windshield. She was like doing everything, by mechanically, etc. Right. So I feel that was the most helpful period in terms of the history of feminism.
But just in terms of because your second wave feminism characterization, which I recognise, but it seems to me that things have gone worse. Now, I mean, we had Christina Hoff Sommers here last year speaking at the festival, and I know that you and
yes,
she and
ally of mine. Yes.
There's a great interview actually. She's probably a fantastic interview on film between Christina and Camille, which you must watch if you haven't already. But where you sort of you anticipated what I have written about recently, but using that phrase "generation snowflake" is it's not a helpful phrase, but it's from America. So that's what they're calling America, and it's often young women. I mean, the generation snowflake phenomena of the thin-skinned, easily offended.
Yes,
and I find it. That's what I was saying. I find it upsetting because I, like you, think. Isn't the point about women's liberation to be free and strong, to take risks, rather than I can't cope with that. If I see a picture, it's going to finish me off, and who can protect me? And the demand is to, for example, in universities, college authorities, you come and protect me.
Yes.
Well,
it's a return to the 1950s vision of femininity again. Okay?
Yeah.
So when my generation arrived in college, I arrived in 1964 in college, and the colleges still believed they had the right and obligation to act in loco parentis in place of the parent. Therefore, the women's dormitories, women were compelled to sign in at 11 o'clock at night, so we were safely inside. The men could run free, for the whole night. We're the ones who said, get out of our private lives. And the colleges said, no, the world is dangerous. We must protect you against rape. And what my generation said was, give us the freedom to risk rape. That is true adulthood, okay, for women. And now everything has regressed. And I do believe it's because nothing has really happened, okay, to this generation. They have not had that initial experience that my generation did of war, and there's I think it's a result of the world of social media also, where people feel they have so many friends, okay, and they want a sense that reality is comforting them and cushioning them and so on. I think there's a great anxiety and a sort of weakness of outline of the personalities of young people. They do, to me, look like as an experienced classroom teacher of 45 years. I mean, I'm starting to self-censor as I speak to them. I'm starting to, it's not that I give trigger warnings or anything like that, but I do feel that they are easily upset, okay, and that their education has been without a realistic introduction to the barbarities of human history, right? I feel that ancient history must be taught, okay, and that there's too much presentism right now. Right? They see a comfortable world around them, the world of the shopping malls, a world of material prosperity, right? And they believe that by any problems in the environment can be remedied by just a little, using a screwdriver, slightly tighten a screw, all right? And soon utopia, will happen. They have no sense, okay, of the special privileges they enjoy in this very affluent, culture. So I believe in introducing young people to the disasters of history.
But actually on teaching, because I think that's the disasters of, that's a good curriculum. But they've just announced that they're getting rid of classical civilization A-level in this country, so that's worth knowing, and art history as it goes.
Yes.
But anyway, one of the things on the actual content of what's, because one of the things that happens is there's an accusation that the young are over-coddled, mollycoddled, and I think that's true. I think the responsibility is my generation that has basically reared them, wrapped people in cotton wool. The problem is there isn't a rebellion except to be wrapped in more cotton wool. So that's not a good sign. So that's what my concern is. But on your point about what you're taught, which I think is really interesting, is one of the things that happens, because I'm interested in education, is that rather than sort of demanding that people are taught more, is that people are taught less or different. So to give you an example, there was a campaign on in schools recently about music A-level in this country that said the problem with music A-level was it was putting off young women because there wasn't enough women composers on the curriculum. So there was this sort of like, we can't, why have you got Mozart and Beethoven, and where are the women? Well, obviously there aren't that many women composers. So the young people who organised this campaign, who was 17, the exam board, backed by the government, in fact, the exam board, instructed by the government of this country, backed down. So Kate Bush, is now on the A-level music curriculum as a course of this victory. But it struck me that every topic loses the sense of what it was about. So we're not interested in music anymore. That was a kind of propaganda lesson. You go into a museum or a gallery with a bunch of young women, and it's we start discussing sexist exploitation, and in fact the galleries and the museums go along with that sort. So I just feel as though, as you're an art teacher, that something's gone wrong in education as well. It's not just that we've wrapped them in cotton wool. They don't know anything. And they're not likely to at this rate. Anyway.
Yes, well, when second wave feminism suddenly burst out in the late 1960s and early 1970s, there was this claim being made by feminists that the history had been censored and that soon would be rediscovered all these unknown female geniuses in the history of the arts. And there really was that belief out there. So there was this search for the undiscovered woman Michelangelo and so on and so forth. Well, there is no woman Michelangelo. Instead, they'll add Artemisia Gentileschi, who was a perfectly capable, competent painter in a certain Baroque style that Rubens did better, etc. And so my book, Sexual Persona, my first book, is about what is the nature of artistic creation, and what is the nature of genius. And I said that men have indeed made most of the major landmarks in the history of the arts, and I tried to explain why. I said it's not because women have less talent, but that men are driven toward hallucination, obsession, diversion, from the priority of women's power over them. And I have all my theories about men's conceptualization that may indeed be related to the intelligence range. That is that women tend to show up at the great midpoint of the IQ range. And you have male geniuses and you have male morons, literally. And I also said that to me, crime. That crime is a conceptual activity, serial sex crime, and so on, and that this is, and I said there is no female Mozart because there is no female Jack the Ripper. You just do not find women showing up as serial murderers. So I think that the ideation is one of the products of the male mind, and that there's a pattern of projection, that I relate. And this, people were incredulous about this, but I still maintain it. That men learn how to project, through their own anatomy. That Freud talked about male urination, as a kind of accomplishment, that primitive man prided himself on his ability to put out a fire, with a stream of urine. And I said that it's a strange thing to be proud of, but it's beyond the scope of woman who would scorch her hams in the process of trying to put out a fire, with urination and so on. And I do believe that male maturation is about controlling those streams, the streams of urine, the ejaculation, and so on. And if a man doesn't control it, he will soil himself in an infantile manner. So I believe that the male pattern of urination is indeed at the heart of. You eventually get to Michelangelo. You're going from that and so on. And I have seen in my own lifetime now. I'm getting into my senior years here. That I've seen many talented women. I knew many extremely competent and promising women, but what they lacked was the power of obsession. There are very few female obsessives. I think I'm one. And so on. But so I'm kind of an odd sport. But I do feel I'm in between the genders. And that there's a kind of life-deranging quality to artistic achievement, where it's a mania, an absolute mania, and it produces rapists, and I believe that feminism by second wave feminism, by hiding, by concealing, by suppressing the evidence for sexual difference, is actually exposing young women to danger, because they do not imagine that there are psychotic males males who are looking at them as prey, who actually see them through primitive eyes. They don't understand it. We're like decades away from Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, 1960, which is about exactly these things I'm talking about right now. So I mean, I think that there are tremendous sexual differences based in hormones, based in biology, that need to be brought into the gender studies curriculum, that are now erased from it. Gender roles are now being maintained as fictive constructs, the result of environmental pressures and so on.
God, I dare I disagree, but I'm going to disagree slightly, because I actually found that everyone's obsessed with the idea of the male gaze and they're all psychos.
Oh, the male gaze.
I mean,
is
I
such
know,
a
but
crock.
what I'm saying is this. Well, you can do, because my fear is that that a lot of women that I talk to imagine, or the description is such that, every man is potentially looking at you with the view of of kind of abusing you in some fashion. I mean, there's no idea that you can be looked at in any admiring way, which is one thing I know that you've talked about and written about over the years. But I don't think everyone's obsessed with the idea that men are hormonally driven to attack.
No, not the hormone. No, they believe it's coming from social indoctrination. No. They believe that men are born to a culture that privileges maleness, which is not at all true for many recent decades, and that they learn and therefore we can retrain them. We can indoctrinate them to change. You say, I'm the only one really talking about the biological roots of it, and there's, to me, absolutely incontrovertible that there is a biological basis to the greater visual component in male sexuality. All right, there are brain differences here. Okay? Males really do see the visual. They were aroused visually much more than women are. And I believe for whatever reason, I'm able to see women in the way men see women, sort of like like Faye Dunaway in the eyes of Laura Mars or something. I feel like I'm like looking at things in the way men do. So the idea of the male gaze. Okay, first of all, Laura Mulvey is a very nice person. Okay, but I'm sorry, she knew absolutely nothing about the history of the arts, and therefore this sudden creation of this idea, which is like contaminated all of film criticism. Okay, oh my goodness, okay, so film criticism is practically not worth reading any longer because it utterly lacks any kind of cultivated basis. But now, wait, we're going on a diversion here. Okay. As I go on about that, okay, I do believe that there is a vestigial hunting archetype still, okay, in that, and that's the way to look at it. It seems to me, the male gaze, and that women of today. Who have been raised in a highly sexualized environment with highly sexualized clothing, a product of my own generation's sexual revolution, do not understand that the way you dress and how much flesh you expose is a form of communication. It's a form of conveying sexual interest or readiness. Now you talk like this, and people will probably lynch you, right now. Okay, I mean, I'm part of the pro-sex movement in feminism that was suppressed. Okay, during the 1970s, 1980s, we burst forth in the 1990s, thanks to Madonna, in her videos of the 1980s and early 90s and so on. All right, but the point is, I also understand, okay, that even while I support and defend and admire pornography and prostitution, I feel that today there's this idea that women can dress however they want. Okay, it's utterly meaningless, and I'm like exposing 90% of my flesh right now, but how dare you be aroused? How dare you? Look away. How dare you? Do not make a remark, okay? As I go with my, Louboutin, like stiletto heels down the road like this, okay? What? Okay, you're looking at my bum. How dare you? Okay, and so on. Right? Absolute. There's a hypocrisy, okay, and a kind of self-delusion, okay, that's operating among many young women, including feminists, okay? All right. So I'm not saying don't dress like that. I'm saying yes, dress like that, but be prepared to defend yourself, okay? Because the street, I call my philosophy street smart Amazon feminism, okay? All right? The street belongs to you. Yes, you have every right, like as a drag queen would, okay, to dress as you want and to bring public attention to yourself. But stop lying to yourself that you're advertising, okay? You're advertising. And I've written before, if you advertise, be ready to sell.
You know that will get you the accusation of victim blaming.
Yes,
that's what will happen.
Go. Yes.
No,
exactly.
I know, but I know. I know that you know that I know. But anyway, so in the recent case of Ched Evans, the footballer, and the rape case, in the midst of trying to have conversations, he in a court of appeal, he got found not guilty. And the young woman involved, who'd obviously, it was a horrible experience, but she couldn't remember any of the incidents and was drunk and so on. But anyway, in the course of the discussion, any attempt at even saying, well, you know, he spent 2.5 years in jail, so he's now innocent, so, you know, any attempt at saying maybe getting, you know, completely off your head drunk it might be sort of slightly problematic for a young woman. Yeah. Immediately, you're a rape apologist, victim blaming, written out of the picture. And that's if you're a woman who's associated with fighting for equality. So if you're a bloke, you can't comment at all, can you? Right. But I mean, do you get that a lot? And
yes,
what you've just said
absolutely.
is victim blaming.
Absolutely. The most controversial piece I ever wrote was my date rape op-ed, for New York Newsday in January of 1991, and I was persecuted for that for years and years and years. And I've walked off talk shows live, and I walked off the Queen Elizabeth Hall stage, to avoid fisticuffs with a moderator who will not be blamed. Let's not name her.
Nameless.
Yeah, she was like one of the Stalinist feminists who infest London. Okay, all right. And I absolutely feel, that if women expect to be treated seriously in modern society, if they expect to achieve, they must accept full responsibility for their part in every encounter, potentially romantic or sexual encounter with a man. Okay, we're not talking here. I mean, I don't know this case. Okay, I keep hearing snatches of it. Okay, I don't know this case, but in my view, we're not talking about a woman being snatched off a street who was going about her business as an innocent, and of course there would be a case of rape, and kidnapping, abduction, which one must condemn. Okay, but the moment you have private individuals who come together with mutual sexual interest, in a context that can lead to sex, I believe the women must accept full responsibility for their behavior and for what they are conveying in it. And it's mixing up of. That essay that I wrote on date rape begins by saying, rape is an outrage that cannot be tolerated in civilized society. I begin with that premise and then go on from there to say that what's called date rape, is to me a distortion of proper feminism, which is these are the freedoms that my generation won, the freedom for women to go out without a chaperone or a duenna, and being simply a child as defined by society, So we're in a period now where there's a tremendous mix-up. I absolutely reject the idea that young women on dates or any woman on a date, should be put into the same category as an authentic victim of rape who should reserve, should be reserved. Our true outrage should be reserved for.
I think that you're familiar because a lot of these ideas came from America in the first place. So one of the things that's happening in UK universities at the moment is mandatory consent classes for where young men have to be taught what consent means. As one student put it, so as he refused to go to the lesson, I don't need to go to a class to be taught not to be a rapist, as an aside. It's so insulting. But then actually quite a lot of, in fact, Ched Evans, that footballer, actually said, I think there should be lessons in what consent is. And you do think, I was kind of defending him before, and then as soon as he said that, I thought, what is wrong with you? If you don't know, maybe we should go back to court. But what do you think of that? Because you just said about a child, the fact that was campaigned for by feminists, that men should go for consent classes, that we should have consent written down like an illegal document.
Sex belongs to the non-verbal realm. It belongs to the realm of the body. Yes, it's an animal instinct rising, in the mind. It used to be that these ideas would have been common coin. Freud was talking about the whole realm of the unconscious, the subliminal, the dream life. But Freud was written out of feminism early on. He was declared to be a sexist. So all of the ambiguities, of human motivation, and the and the way that Freud's idea about ambivalence, okay, where one can be of mixed minds, okay, about one's parents, about one's lovers, and so on. Also, Freud's ideas about family romance and the way that people are carrying forever the marks of their particular relationship as children to their parents. Right? And that's another thing, okay, that with Freud out of the picture, young women don't understand that they may become symbolic, okay, in a drama with a young man who is at the verge of achieving his own independent identity, free of his mother. Okay, so this moment of college is extremely charged, for young men. Okay, this is the point where the sexes are discovering who they are. Right? So women want it both ways. That's what I think. That there's the lack of psychological acuity or subtlety in current feminist discourse has produced part of this problem. Now, at my experience with women, I've been a total failure as a lesbian. Let me tell you right now. Okay, I can understand. I really understand how maddening women are to men. Okay, absolutely maddening. I mean, a man can clearly read that a woman is interested in a sexual way by her body language and so on and so forth. All right, and then he makes a move on her, and absolutely not. How dare you, etc. I'm telling you, women are everything that men see in women. Okay, this quality. I have seen it. Okay, all right. So, because women don't have the marker of their own excitation. Okay, a man knows immediately. He gets a hard on, like immediately. He knows, oh, I'm interested. Okay, whether it's a gay man or a straight man. Okay, but women can be you absolutely can read their radiating sexual readiness, and then yet, oh, how dare you? Okay, and so on. I'm telling you. Okay, all right. Men's frustration with women. Okay, is actually based in reality. So, I mean, I do feel that. That right now, when you have this overbearing kind of this fascist intrusion by authority figures into declaring these are the rules of sex, you must transfer every possible sensory impulse or sensation into words. I mean, it's almost ridiculous. It's almost like we're reading a satire. Okay, you need a Pope or a Swift. You need to deal with the limited mentalities of these commissars of government and of universities who dare, okay, to intrude into young people's social and sexual lives. How dare they? They're vampires, okay? It's up to young people to rebel. Young people must rebel and say, get out of our sex lives, okay? Exactly the way my generation did.
Right. Only a couple more things before I open it up. There's been quite a lot of talk, quite a lot of good work actually done by a number of people on something called concept creep, and the idea that, words such as bullying, harassment, and so on have become almost meaningless as they've got wider and wider and wider. Mm-hmm. Is that one of the things that's happened in relation to victims? I mean, the here in the UK, in fact, only yesterday or the day before, there was a big report about rampant sexual violence on campus, and when you read it, you were thinking, does anyone know what violence is? Yes. And also, I mean, because it really was like, I went to the bar in Freshers Week, and I felt threatened because somebody talked to me. I mean, I'm not even overstating it. But then also, we had that incident, which is totally serious and kind of ended discussed, which was Cecil Rhodes, the imperialist, or 19th century imperialist, the statue of him in Oxford University, the big campaign to pull it down. But the main thing was that endless reams of academic articles written about how walking past the statue was the kind of violence, was an act of violence. And that the people who walked past that statue, people of colour who walked past that statue, felt violated as their ancestors did by slavery. And you think, what? I mean, you're a privileged member of the Oxford University community, and you're walking past a statue and you think that it's as violent as being kept as a slave.
Yes,
but
that's
right. You can laugh, right?
Yes, right.
This is filmed. I am likely to get in a lot of trouble for saying this. I mean, that's the point.
Yes.
But the concept creep means that actually people do feel, I don't think they're even making it up. Mm-hmm. I think they walk past a statue and feel violated.
Yes.
I think they get chatted up in the bar and feel sexual violence has been done to them.
Right.
So how do we make concepts mean something anymore?
Well, this is part of this inflation of the power of words. That's coming also from post-structuralism, which believes that gender is not based in the body, but is the result of refractions of language and so on. So there's so we're in a period, okay, of bureaucraties where for me we have to push the bureaucrats back. Okay, so I want a total reduction in the number of administrators in colleges and universities. It used to be it wasn't a British problem; it was simply an American problem. But it started over here now. Okay, as with government regulations, government requirements, and then scrutiny of what's going on campus. In the case of America, the Obama administration, okay, has tied government funding going to universities to the seriousness with which it takes sexual harassment investigations and persecutions on campus. So the way that colleges and universities have dealt with this is simply by creating a new office, an office, that's going to investigate sexual misconduct and to add on more and more administrators. Okay? So the faculty has been utterly passive. Okay, and I think that's true probably over here as well. Okay, the faculty thinks, oh, this is like inconsequential. It's external to what we do. But no, I'm sorry. Okay, the entire function of the universities is turned into instead of intellectual inquiry and knowledge, it's turned really into universities have turned to a branch, okay, of social engineering, okay, and I think the bureaucrats throughout history, you must fear, okay, an overexpansion of bureaucracy. It led to, I believe, the fall of the Mesopotamian civilizations, the fall of Rome, etc. Bureaucrats have a particular kind of stereotypical mentality, and when they get sex, okay, in their, within their purview, you see what happens, okay, all the sex goes out of, sex becomes merely a word, and then it's all of a sudden we get these connections to what you're talking about, to violence and everything else. So the words become increasingly meaningless, but in the world of bureaucracy.
We've toyed a little bit with you with the gender question, so I think that it's one that really bothers people or interests people as well. So we've had you as Robin Hood at 8, or even as Napoleon, and that's interesting. And this sort of idea of kind of fluidity, and certainly growing up, my political understanding, as much as a feminist as I was that I didn't think it was fair that all the masculine virtues were the good ones, that I want, like, intellect and bravery and, leadership and all. I thought, God, they haven't got a monopoly on them, right? And that all the feminine virtues were simpering and hopeless. Yes. And so I thought part of being, was grabbing back those as humanist values, and I was going to have some of them. And then, of course, now I'm considered to be the wrong kind of feminist, who wants to imitate men, and as you said, actually. Right. But there is something weird, despite that, about the transgender question, right? There is something going on that's beyond the sort of liberation of fluidity. Something else seems to have happened, where many young people in this country now, there's a percentage increase in the number registering for clinical interventions on transgender questions has increased enormously. There's a certain fashion in schools of some sort, and it's a nerve-wracking business. If you're going to get no platformed in this country at university, Germaine Greer, regardless of what one thinks of Germaine Greer, the point is you only have to touch on this question. Ian McEwan, who is completely right on liberal, a novelist, dared to say the slightly wrong thing, and suddenly he kind of has to apologise and is kind of ridiculed and shamed. So I don't want to get you to say anything you don't believe, but I'm interested in it because I want to be for liberation. I'm not going to stop anyone dressing how they will. But there's something weird about lots of young women wanting to be young men and lots of young men wanting to be women. I don't feel as though it's a great step forward myself. Thoughts?
Well, I say in the introduction to my new book, my new collection, my particular transgender rebellion came at a time when there wasn't these ideas in the air, that the moment you are dissatisfied with the limitations of your present gender definition, that there is this enormous mechanism waiting to alter your body, to halt puberty, to slow your puberty down. People, all very well-meaning and very sympathetic, are there to provide surgical intervention and potential, permanent changes in your body with which there's no going back. Okay? For me, a sex change operation opens one door but closes many others. Right? So I personally believe that anyone who collaborates in an intrusion into a developing child's body and mind is guilty of child abuse, a crime against humanity, okay? Because that child is not prepared to make such a decision, okay? I think that such decisions about sex reassignment surgery must wait when one attains a majority, which would be, it seems to me, a minimum of age 18. I'm very concerned with this because I think that it's become a fashion, okay, that the transgender definition has become a kind of convenient label for young people who may simply feel alienated, okay, culturally for many other reasons, okay. So that in the 1950s they might have become a beatnik, in the 1960s they might have become a hippie and taken mind-expanding drugs, okay. And so today you're encouraged to think that it's an alienation is because you're not totally identifying with your particular inherited gender definition. So I'm very concerned about this. I think that a lot of it, I think that the collaboration of the bureaucratic machinery with it has to do with the assault on masculinity, okay? Okay, so you see, gender doesn't really exist. It's not really polarity. I mean, everything's all about expanding women's rights, but also terminating men, okay, and defining men out of existence. Masculinity is by definition toxic, okay? Masculinity doesn't exist. And you see, this is the proof of it. Now, I began all of my studies, my book Sexual Personae began as a dissertation at Yale graduate school on androgyny. I've always been fascinated, attracted to the subject of androgyny, and that's what sexual personae is. I explored it in history. But the more I explored it, I realized that historically, the movement toward androgyny occurs in late phases of culture, okay, as a civilization is starting to unravel, okay, and that you can find it again and again and again through history in the Greek art, okay, you can see it happening. All of a sudden, okay, there's a kind of there's the sculptures of handsome nude young men athletes that used to be very robust, okay, in the archaic period suddenly began to seem like wet noodles, okay, toward the end, okay, and that the people who live in such periods, a late phase of culture, whether it's the Hellenistic era, whether it's the Roman Empire, whether it's the Mauve decade of Oscar Wilde in the 1890s, whether it's Weimar Germany, people who live at such times, okay, feel that they're very sophisticated, they're very cosmopolitan, okay, homosexuality, heterosexuality, so what, anything goes, and so on, all right, and so, but from the perspective of historical distance, okay, you can see that it's a culture that no longer believes in itself, okay, and then what you invariably get are people who are convinced of the power of heroic masculinity, okay, on the edges, whether they're the Vandals and the Huns, okay, or whether they're the barbarians of ISIS, okay, you see them, starting to mass on the outsides of the culture, and that's what we have right now. That there is a tremendous and rather terrifying disconnect between the infatuation with the transgender movement in our own culture and what's going on out there, okay, all right, and so I mean that's why I'm concerned. I feel it's ominous, okay. I question whether the transgender choice is indeed genuine in every single case. But what concerns me is when well-meaning adults, believe that they're helping people by making it easier some permanent change in the body from which there is no going back. For example, Brown University, one of the elite Ivy League schools in the United States, put sex reassignment surgery on its student insurance program. Okay, so that it becomes they can get a sex change in college. I thought, oh my Lord, okay, I feel that's evil. Okay, because what it does to young people today facing an uncertain job market. Okay, what it says, people who are questioning their gender while they're at Brown University suddenly feel, well, it's like economically, a better judgment, for me to move now on this rather than to wait till I don't have a job and living in my parents' basement. Okay, and so actually, the adult community trying to be understanding, okay, is, I think, involved in possibly making a permanent change in someone's life that could have tragic consequences.
Okay. So many more things I want to ask, but let me ask you if you want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like 3 or 4 at a time.
Few quick thoughts, starting from your last point on transgender and reassignment. I was just wondering, because the issue of control features very much nowadays. I mean, it featured along in the Brexit campaign. I'm not going down that route. It featured a lot in politics nowadays. I was wondering whether young people are trying to give a sense to themselves that at least this is an area where they can exercise some control over their lives, as opposed to their jobs in a globalized world, as opposed to relationships, as opposed to, because increasingly there is no concept of a constraint anymore, of a family, of a structure. So just a thought on the last.
Yes, I mean, I think I'm very concerned that the issue of identity, okay, has shrunk down, okay, to merely a gender, your position on a big scale of a ruler. There's a tiny little infinitesimal gradations of gender, and has shrunk to the body itself, okay, and management of the body, and that is a sad consequence. I believe that identity should be much broader. So we're in this period of a particular kind of desiccated secularism. Now, as an atheist, I still am extremely interested in religions. I feel that world religion should be taught at the most fundamental level. Then we would understand much more about Islam and everything else right now. If people had been listening to me 25 years ago, right? And I feel that identity should, like in my generation, 1960s, the people who took drugs, when they were searching for themselves, they discovered the universe through drugs. Okay, there was a vision quest like that of the Native Americans. So there was a metaphysical dimension to their in a tremendous kind of cosmic distance, okay, to their self-identification. They were explorers of the universe, of ultimate reality beyond society. Today, this is sad to me. Okay, yeah. The idea that I am just how do you identify? Okay, I am and there's like incredible range of things to choose from. Yeah, and that just shows you the failures of our educational system. Okay, which has tried to make everyone feel good and to have good feelings about themselves and no bullying, et cetera, instead of giving them hard knowledge about the past. Okay, and so yes, go ahead.
And this leads me very neatly on this very quick second point. Quick. This sense of wanting everyone to cuddle everyone and well-being and protectionism. Yes. I wonder whether there is this new mentality of victim blaming. There was a recent judge case whereby even a minor was more or less blamed. I think people might know what I'm talking about, following a rape, because more or less she asked for it. I think it was a female judge actually who made that point in the UK. This might ring bells to some people's thoughts. So I'm thinking, if there is this new culture of victim blaming, how does this reinforce this sense of agency and responsibility that your generation of feminists, you said,
okay, right, yeah. So, but apart from anything else, I think that it's the opposite, which is that there's not an era of victim blaming. There's an era of saying anyone who disagrees with you is a victim blamer, which is a whole different ball game.
Yes, that's true.
By the way, yeah. Right? I'm going to, because I want to take some more. Right? Yes.
Hi, I go to an American liberal arts college. Thank you so much for existing. You probably saved my life.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, I found these uncanny similarities between the very right-wing kind of religious conservatism, or that view of women as needing protection and kind of extolling feminine virtues like vulnerability and all that, and the kind of very left-wing opposite of that. And it almost seems like they're coming full circle in the sense that now I've been told that reading a book would be too much for me to cope with because of a certain experience I've had in my life, right? Or like the thought that somehow just reading a poster of some sort, or like a man being in the classroom, would somehow unsettle me to the point where that man would need to leave the classroom to make that classroom safe for me to be in.
Yeah.
So how do you see the similarities?
Oh, absolutely. I feel that human beings need religion. They need a religious perspective, a cosmic perspective. And getting rid of the orthodox religions, because they were too conservative, has simply led to the new religion of political correctness. All right? And so, and it's the same kind of fanaticism. I mean, I have found that second wave feminists, it's like the Spanish Inquisition. I'm not kidding. Okay, like anything with any form of dissent, even within feminism, is treated as heresy. Okay, and they actually try to destroy you. When I wrote my piece on date rape in 1991, there was clearly an organized campaign among feminist groups to get me fired from my university. They harassed the president of the university, and who thank heavens, okay, I had tenure, but also he took the very enlightened view that faculty are free to express their views. But if I were a younger faculty member, I wouldn't have dared to speak out. Okay, I would have been vulnerable in the promotion process and so on. So I do think that the independent thinkers have been driven out of academia. I mean, there are plenty of men who just gave up. Okay, I remember being. There's a young woman, Katie Royfey, for example, who's gone on to write various books and so on, who's the daughter of a novelist, a well-known novelist in the United States and so on. And she had told me, it was like 20 years ago now, I said, aren't you going on, in graduate school? And she said, well, that was my dream, to become a professor. She said, but I don't dare. She said, because there's no place for me in academia. I wouldn't. And I said, but it's only through dissident young free thinkers, who make their way, in the universities, who will change the universities. And now eventually she does teach now on a kind of ad hoc basis, I think, at NYU, which is a return to it. But every independent thinker, every person who is a truly original thinker, who has been driven out of American academia, at least over the decades. I've heard abundantly from letters I've been getting for 25 years. I mean, there was one letter I remember very, very clearly from a woman who said that she was now painting houses in Missouri, and she said that she was in the comparative literature program at Berkeley, which is extremely PC and so on. And she said that every time in their seminar that she would express enthusiasm about the work under study, and people would look at her as if she had created some offense, because of course the new style is that you take this deconstructionist view, debunking view of great literature and art. Therefore, you wade into something which is admired by others, and you, with your red pen, check off, racism, sexism, homophobia, and so on. Right? So this is what's happened. Is that the universities have increasingly become a place for the time servers, for the obedient, for the servile, right? and the true independent things are gone. Okay? And therefore, this is what I say, is that every individual, male or female, must see life as something that you are personally responsible for. You are responsible for your own education. Okay? You cannot be dependent on teachers or, people should be looking at college not as a place to receive, most of the teachers are going to be, conventional. Instead, it's an opportunity to read in the library. That's what I did. I went into the library, and I just, my shrine was Yale's Sterling Library. I just went in there and I ransacked, So I just floor after floor after floor, book after book after book, and I discovered all kinds of things, forgotten or suppressed voices. They're out there, Illumination and enlightenment are there, available for every individual. It's a matter of personal responsibility. That's the essence of my feminism and of my approach to life.
All right. Okay, so
all right.
A couple of things very important in that, and it is disconcerting, is that a lot of the witch hunts, and that's what they are, against people that call for people to lose their jobs and get sacked and so on, sadly, are led by people who call themselves feminists. I mean, that is, or progressives, because I'm aware of the fact that there will be people in this room who are thinking, the Institute of Ideas said this wouldn't be an echo chamber, and I'm leading a kind of cheering here. But I don't care in this instance. I think that's very important, so I think to bear that in mind. And then the second thing is, just on that point about reading the library, that kind of great books tradition, read, actually is completely unfashionable. And that is tragic. And I do think that that's what makes, because people have said to me about you'll be delighted to know, contrarian, and they say the same, it's like, if you said black, you said white. The thing that is incredible is how erudite and widely read and cultured you are, which should be an inspiration, which just means that your dissident voice is not based on some sort of silly shock jock reaction, which is the way people try and characterize those of us, and I don't want to say that, but, you know, anyone who's a dissident, they try and shut up as being sort of a fool who just is a kind of attention seeker.
Right.
What saves you absolutely is that you have read that library.
Right. Now, in my new book, we produce a very extensive review I did for the Chronicle of Higher Education of 3 new books by women academics for university presses on the bondage and domination movement, all kinds of things, dominatrixes and so on. Right? And one of the points I made in this was like about my horror, looking at the bibliography of those books, and one in particular, there was no extensive bibliography. There was no book published before the 1980s in anthropology. All right. You see, because young people, these are young academics, have been convinced there's nothing worth reading in the history of scholarship before the 1980s period, influenced by postmodernism and poststructuralism. Okay, this is an absolute horror, okay, because the best work, okay, that ever done in scholarship preceded that. Okay, it is what I based my own work on. Okay, especially the great British tradition of classical anthropology, you know, of the late 19th century, early 20th century, and so on. Okay, so we have academics, people teaching, okay, who believe, okay, that all former scholarship has been superseded, okay, by Foucault, okay, who knew nothing, okay. Foucault, okay. Foucault was not a scholar, okay, and he was a minor bird, okay, taking things from very important works that influenced me, like Irving Goffman and so on.
I think one of the interesting things is nowadays kind of the way people are looking at university campuses as if they were a microcosm of society, and it's like an introspection on themselves. So one of the things I think comes into it is like class. So this rise of like anti-lad culture and kind of anti-frat boy culture, I suppose, would be the parallel in America. On campuses, more to do with like a denigration of working class culture, you know, going out, drinking lager, watching sports, and, you know, reading red top newspapers. And then I think like the flip side of that as well is like, why are we becoming so like ready to broaden and like expand childhood on campus? So like people are saying now your childhood doesn't end till you're 25. Well, like, fuck that, I'm 25, I've been an adult since I was 18. You know, so why are we now so interested in seeing university campuses as a microcosm of society?
Let me just say something about, yes, that expansion of childhood. And then this is a product, okay, of our new period, where it's assumed that for careers you need a whole, you know, advanced education, not only college education, but then postgraduate work. And so by the time you're ready to be an adult, people are in their late 20s, early 30s. So now, whereas in the old days, okay, with the period that was less service sector economy and more you know, based on manufacturing and so on, you had people marrying you know, right out of high school. For example, my parents married. My father was still in college. I was born while he was still in college, and therefore, you know, I'm the product of young parents. So this one of the things I'm trying to encourage, right, is that, and this is also in my new book, pieces I've written in my new book. I've called for young women, okay, to be educated much more about biological differences. It's women who must start thinking about whether, early on, whether they want children or not. Okay, how do they see their lives in the future? Do they want simply a career, or do they want a career and children? If so, it's up to young women. Okay, have the right, have the obligation to decide: do they want their children early or late? Because the period of maximum fertility is early. Okay, once a woman is settled, she's in her 30s, okay, there are all kinds of risks that start to happen because of biological differences. I believe that colleges would gain enormously, okay, from, okay, the presence of married students in the classroom, women who have had children, okay, a lot of the ridiculous statements of gender studies would disappear if there were women in the classroom who had experienced the hormonal issues, okay, and the issue of procreation, okay, so the only way the issue of procreation abortion is like part of the feminist agenda these days, is in terms of abortion, okay, or in terms of child care demands, okay. That's it. In other words, the child care meaning that a child is a burden, okay, for Western career woman who puts personal accomplishments at the center of her life. Now, I myself, a lot of my work is based on not just library research, but social observation. I'm always watching, okay, watching the way real people are interacting in real human space. Okay, I'm not just like a theory, okay, about reality. And what I've noticed is that working class families, you have people, women marrying much earlier, okay, so that they are, they become grandmothers in their 30s or 40s, okay, and I see them when I go down to the New Jersey shore towns, okay, and I see all of these families, multi-generational families, vacationing together in inexpensive hotels. I'm going, this is the life of working class life is far more rich, okay, as the years go on, as the decades go on, okay, because the families are vacationing together, right? And okay, you see these multi-generations, okay. And I thought, when people get old, my generation, the baby boom women, okay, who went out into careers and so on, they're about to hit the wall, okay, of old age, okay. All of a sudden, because the moment you retire from your job, you could be the corporate chief, okay. You might have millions in the bank, okay. All of a sudden, you have lost all meaning the moment you leave that, okay. And you're gonna and what's going to happen? These unmarried women, okay, who've achieved so much and so on, are suddenly alone, okay, at the ends of their lives, okay, and are looking back almost with an eye of Hinduism or Buddhism, and say, what did it matter? What materialism, okay, status in the world, okay, property, okay, objects, and so on. What does it mean at the end of your life? I look at these working class families, and I go, and I see the old people sitting in their chairs and so on, looking at their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren running around in front of them, okay, in these larger working class families, and I go, they have a great sense of satisfaction, okay. They feel that they've passed on life itself, okay, at the end of their own lives, okay. So I think that there are all kinds of questions about what is the meaning of life, what is going to be ultimately, of spiritual satisfaction to you as your life goes on. These questions are completely eliminated from our current demanding sense of entitlement, which is at the basis, okay, of this kind of social welfare ideology.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you for being here, first of all.
Yes.
If you're advertising, you better be ready to sell. Nobody take this the wrong way, but I think I'm selling. But I don't know what I'm selling. I'm not sure what I'm selling. I enjoy being a biological woman. I do. I enjoy physical sex. Am I allowed to say that here? I do. I'm an unmarried woman, alone, maybe. But I've never wanted to be locked into my biology. And some of my interaction and some of what I'm selling is ideas. It's the sellable part of me. And I'm selling that to blokes and people and all sorts of people. And I'd like to hear you say something about that sellable part of male, female, whoever you'd want to be, and selling ideas and working together, male and female, working class politics, as we've said. Where does all of this and that relationships we share with each other and what we're selling to each other, and maybe selling's the wrong term here, maybe I mean engaging with each other, where does that leave us individually in negotiating those relationships, and collectively, politically, where we're going with that? I don't want to be alone all my life. I'd like to do something with people.
Yeah, well, we're in a kind of brave new world. It's a brand new territory because as from my reading of history, we're in a very recent period, the period following the Industrial Revolution, where for the first time women emerged from the private sphere, okay, and are working side by side with men at the office. So to me, from what I can see, there's a certain disillusion that the sexes have right now. The mystery of sexual difference is quite gone, and women, particularly career women who are making their own own way. I find it difficult, okay, to deal with men, and vice versa. There's mutual suspicion. When I look at the the agrarian period that has been really the totality of human history until the industrial period, what I see is that women were actually happier, okay, in that period. They lacked civil rights and political rights and career rights as we know them. And so we think of, oh, they were in prison, but actually there was a sense of happiness. They lived in the world of women. There was a solidarity among women, right? And I think I just have this special position because all four of my grandparents were born in Italy, and so was my mother. Okay, so I'm only one generation removed from the old rural lifestyle, and I can clearly remember, okay, that world of women. My grandfather was working in a shoe factory in upstate New York, but the women of that old period, the older women ruled that world of women. Okay, and today we're in a period which values youth, okay, and energy and vitality, and aging women have been edged off the map in terms of meaning. Okay, so we have women who are like free agents like yourself, okay, who are moving, looking for a position, okay, looking for respect, okay, but it's like we're in intergalactic outer space, okay. We are literally redefining, making up new definitions of personality. And there's a sense of engagement, but then loneliness and separation and disconnection, etc. Okay, right. Whereas in that multi-generational world that I'm talking about, the solidarity of women, women had total command over the home, also of the world of procreation. I can remember how unimportant young women were in that system. Young women today, the young woman is everything now. Okay, because we're in a period where and youth, especially in America, must be preserved at any cost. So there's an enormous industry in Botox and fillers and women hair extensions and aging women in this age of divorce, desperately trying to keep up their competitive value, versus young women in the market. Okay, this is a reversal of the human norm. Okay, wherever I go in the world, I encounter middle-class professional women of affluence and accomplishment who are unhappy. The unhappiness, okay, of professional women across is global now. Okay, it's whether it's in Europe or Italy, in Britain, Brazil, okay, and so on. Okay, they're unhappy, and they want to blame men for it. Okay, but it's actually a systemic problem. Okay, is that the women are now in a very cold and mechanical environment, the world of the professions, which gives us independence. I'm very happy for it. I'm happy to be born at this time. I would have had to be a nun, to get away from the family unit, before, etc. Right? My only option would have been in the old days to be a nun. But okay. Again, I feel that that the old system, the agrarian system, privileged old aging women. I can remember how young women, a new bride, was regarded as absolutely, she's like a puppet, okay, for the older women. The older women were in total control, okay. I can remember, like a pregnant young woman, who had been recently married, okay. She was not permitted to do anything, okay. Lie down. They had the wisdom about that advanced pregnancy meant that don't strain yourself, put your feet up, and so on. And the older women, the immigrant women, who were like in their 70s and 80s, were tough, big voices that would deafen you, so powerful, as opposed to the breathy bourgeois voice, okay, of the girls now, at the Ivy League, okay, in the United States, who need all those protections because they're unable to deal with men on their own, and so on. These women, they were muscular, okay, they could do anything, they could lift cars, and so on. all kinds of things. All right? So what's happened is we are. This is it's a brave new world. Okay, everything's in flux. Okay, and instead of empowering women, okay, to survive as individuals in this new world, okay, we have a system now that is so infantilizing, so paternalistic. Okay, and so Claire and I are like parallel warriors and trying to drive this back. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
Ella.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on that depiction of the tough woman, because I got into a lot of trouble recently for signing off an article, as I many times have done, saying that women should be able to and should prove themselves to be as big and ugly and tough as men. And I got into a huge amount of trouble about this because people said to me, how dare you suggest that women should have to prove their strength, or that they should have to compete with an idea of strength. And actually it got me thinking about what you were saying at the start, that feminism in the past disparaged men to such a certain extent, said that it was men that was the problem, men were evil, all that kind of stuff. And now, actually, it's more about disparaging women, and it's saying that women shouldn't have to prove themselves to any kind of level of excellence or worth, whether that be represented by men or not, but that women need to be accepted in their weakness, accepted in their vulnerability. So, do you think now that contemporary feminism has essentially failed women?
Yes, that every kind of excuse is being made for the preservation of a certain type of decorous bourgeois femininity, okay? I mean, that's what I think is going on here, okay? I identify much more strongly with a working class style, a style of the street. I mean, because I feel the street is like an arena where there is no law, and that working class women, African American, Latina, Italian American, have in their ability to, in their body language, right, and their voices, okay, take charge, take control of space much better than this bourgeois model of femininity that was typical of the 1950s and that now is encouraged, okay, in the classroom, in the elite schools in the United States. So I do think that there is this idea of decorum, almost a Victorian notion of decorum, of primness, of certain priggishness, okay, has come back. Now it could be generational, because my generation of the 1960s, like that of the flappers of the 1920s, okay, was very interested in using language, that was associated with swearing, like sailors, and talking in a bawdy, lusty way, and breaking through the speech codes in the same way that you have Lenny Bruce, okay, was a great hero of, okay, and the police would come, okay, and arrest him in nightclubs, okay, because he was using words that were declared obscene, okay. So today, you have this withdrawal, okay, to me, really a regression, okay, to a pre-feminist stage of decorous and fragile femininity that I think is, this to me is not feminism, okay? This is actually anyone who espouses such a thing, anyone who thinks that women are so weak that they need the protections of society, okay, is just simply rolling back, feminism. Okay? And I deny, okay, that any woman, okay, who argues for the protection, of women in this way, okay, is not a true feminist.
I respectfully disagree with a lot of things you've said, but as a student, I think I'm going to raise some concerns about what you said about the university. I think in this debate, we've conflated two very different things, mollycoddling versus raising genuine concerns about structural gender and racial injustice in college and university campuses. I think what you call Generation Snowflake is a generation that recognizes diversity in the classroom and is more sensitive to the various kinds of injustices that students from all over the world come with. I'm from University of Oxford. I've been a participant in the Rhodes Must Fall movement. I think it's a convenient liberal argument to make for free speech by saying that, just get over your problems. And what you said about spending time in the library and making education a personal enterprise, I think it's very easy to individualize these things from a position of privilege. But I think we should address greater concerns about very deep-rooted racial and gender injustices in our curriculum in the universities. Let's not trivialize very important concepts like safe spaces and trigger warnings, because it's easy to pick up, small instances from schoolrooms and, destroy the whole concept of having safe spaces in the universities. But they do address some very genuine concerns about bringing more equality, equity, and diversity to the classrooms.
Okay, so that was an important contribution because it actually reflects far more the popular position than anything or many of the things that Camille, or in a much lesser way, I have said. That is the kind of resonance.
To use the phrase diversity, okay, and believe that this is the way diversity will be achieved, okay, through this privileging of authority, of surveillance, okay, from above, okay, I just simply disagree. I believe true diversity is achieved through a genuine multiculturalism, which I have been arguing for 25 years, would be based on the study of world religions in the classroom. I believe that is the true diversity, is to authentically study the other culture, not through this enforced diversity and again, a Victorian kind of a discourse with all kinds of circumlocutions to avoid giving offense, right? So again, I simply disagree with what you've said. I'm sorry.
And the truth is that there is a split in this room, undoubtedly at this festival and in society. And what I hope over the next 2 days that we can do is to argue and not hide away in safe spaces, which one can be glib about, but which I've actually read all of the literature on, which is why I'm so opposed to them, rather than I'm being glib. I know what the arguments are, I disagree with them, and people have got to argue for them rather than suggest that the person on the other side is being glib. So let's try and have that argument out and listen to each other and argue about it.
Wait,
yes, you can. One last person after that.
And I think one of the problems and why we disagree, you see, is that there is much too much focus on the present. In other words, when the word diversity becomes a banner for let's remedy this in the present. I don't think that's the purpose of education. Okay, I think education is about opening the great past, okay, and of global cultures generally. Okay, more knowledge, more hard knowledge. Okay? So this migration, okay, this transformation of the classroom situation and of the university setting into a praxis to cure present problems, that is wrong. The university should be about abstract and detached study of the past, okay, and of the global present. It should not be about remedying problems. That is a social welfare agency issue.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Okay, what? I know that I've insulted you all by not taking you, but I've only got one person. You've got the microphone. This is the last point from the floor. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for many of your challenging points of view. I just wanted to ask you to elaborate on something you said earlier about women and their sexual energies and having to be aware of that. Because I feel like throughout my life, and a lot of females have been told to repress that and don't even know if they're like advertising themselves or whatever. Because I suppose when I go out on the sesh with my friends, there are two different ways I go. I go like, if I don't want to pull, I dress in a certain way. If I want to pull, I dress a bit more provocatively or whatever. But the problem is that half of the time we are being sexualized, but we don't know that, and we're not trying to put something across. And how can we, like, I think it's just as much a male's responsibility, and I think there should be education on consent, maybe not at a university or college level or whatever, because that's a bit patronizing, but younger in primary school to, explain that women see stuff differently and men see stuff differently. I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but just it feels really unfair that I'm being told to, be careful about my sexual energies or whatever, when they're being misinterpreted. I've had so many male friends coming on to me or whatever when I'm just being friendly. So yeah, it just feels unfair.
Well, the mating rituals, okay, have been completely disrupted because of the sexual revolution. I mean, they used to be, young women used to be very much overprotected, okay, by their families. So there was the fear of, when virginity was a very important element in marriageability. Okay? A woman who lost her virginity, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, was in effect injured on the marriage market. Okay, so as my generation, the flappers also the 1920s had rejected virginity, but my generation rejected it and moved toward the sexual liberation, and the meaning of virginity has totally vanished. The problem is that I would say the majority of young women are not perhaps prepared, okay, for this. Okay, already pressures are on younger girls who are like 10, 11, 12, okay, from in high school, and middle school in the United States, girls are losing their virginity, and essentially what the sexual revolution has wrought is a devaluation, okay, of a girl's identity. Okay, she has to be compliant in order to maintain popularity. So I think, from my observation, I think a lot of young women are having sex not because they want to have sex, okay, but simply because it's expected of them, and if the boy doesn't get it from them, he's going to get it from someone else. So we're actually in a period of chaos, okay, right, in which all the old rules have been thrown out. Each young woman has to make decisions on her own. Women who are extremely religious are able to have a reason to preserve, to be abstinent. They have a moral or a religious and family-supported reason for it. So I mean, I feel that the sexual realm, which seemed very exciting to my generation as we broke through the Doris Day restrictions and so on, has produced there's a very melancholy picture, okay, where when both sexes have no idea what the rules are. So I mean, I don't know how to quite answer your question, except to say that I don't see any cure for this in the foreseeable future. I think that the women in our era are now being asked to operate as lone wolves, okay, in the sexual arena. I have been very influenced throughout my life, okay, by gay men and the way they conduct their lives. And the gay men have a sense of adventure about sex. Okay, they understand the risks of sex. They understand the risks of sex with strangers. Gay men have known that for thousands of years. They've been very bold about accepting that. Okay? Gay men end up beaten and dead, okay, from their sexual adventures. They don't ask for special protections. Okay? They don't ask, okay, for compassion from society and hand-holding and so on and so forth. So I think that young women have to decide. Okay, do they want the life of abstinence according to religious prescriptions over time? Okay, or look at the way gay men conduct their lives and do likewise, okay, and be like Chrissy Hynde got into great trouble, for saying, well, I know that I made some misjudgments there, and like when I got gang raped by a motorcycle gang and so on, and so what? I learned from it, and everyone attacked her. How dare you? What? Okay, you're not a victim. You refuse to be a victim. Well, I admire her for that. Okay, and because that's the gay men model. Okay.
Okay. Anything that ends with a kind of hymn to Chrissy Hynde is good with me. But also, just think about some of the things we've heard. Give us the freedom to risk rape is a profound call that goes against the grain, which even if you don't agree with it, is absolutely to be thought about, looked at, mulled over. And I think that sometimes with contemporary feminism, and in defiance of it, we have Camille, the issue is always, can you make my life risk-free? And if you make your life risk-free and safe, you may face no risks, but you will not be free. You can be safe, locked up, looked after, and not allowed out. And you'll be safe, but you will not be human, you will not be free. And that is not what women's liberation aspired to.
Yes. Right.
So even if you don't agree with things that Camille has said, the simple closing down of freedom as an option for young women today by contemporary feminism deserves a good kicking intellectually, and it just got one from Camille. Thank you very much, Camille.